My name is Dan Varner. It's my privilege to serve as the Chief Executive Officer at Excellent Schools Detroit. We're a private nonprofit organization in Detroit. We were set up by a coalition of folks, and we were founded in 2010 with the shared goal of creating an excellent education for every Detroit child, cradle to career, by 2020. And the last thing that I'll mention on this is that we are governance neutral. Which means that we don't really care what the governance model is. It could be a traditional district, it can be a charter school, it doesn't matter for us. The issue is what are the student outcomes that are being produced. I really want to talk about, for a few minutes, what I think is missing from the legislation that would make it stronger and would prevent us, I think, from being back here in 5 or 10 years having the same conversation. I'll start today by going back to our founding fathers. They, of course, didn't get everything right, but one of the things that they got right was public education. Much has changed in 1780, but I would argue that the importance of public education has not. And I do believe that it is one of our greatest responsibilities collectively and one of your greatest responsibilities as elected representatives of the public, as members of this government. Public education is an incredibly important quality public education is an incredibly important thing for us to deliver to every child. Really quickly, just because we see data from different sources, and so the Great Lakes Education Project has periodically celebrated the performance of charter schools, and it is marginally better than Detroit Public Schools' performance when we look at the data. We would agree with that. I just want to be clear with you that that better performance still leaves all these kids in red on the right not proficient, right? So a few more kids in green, but it's atrocious across the board. Like, there is no magic bullet here. It's not like somebody in Detroit is just, like, a sector is killing it. There are individual schools that are doing well, both in DPS and in charters, and individual schools in DPS and among charters that are not doing well. The root problems here, I submit to you, are 4. And this is really what we've got to address in the legislation. First, the lack of local accountability for schools violates the foundational democratic principles upon which this country was founded and this state was founded, and makes it very difficult for folks locally to actually be invested in fixing this problem. Second, uncoordinated school openings, closings, the siting of schools, transportation and enrollment processes, some of which you've heard about today, all of that create colossal inefficiencies and instability. It's a huge waste of money. Third, opaque and inconsistent school processes, like enrollment, leave families and students inequitably served. And fourth, some of which you heard today also, instability and incoherence make it difficult to recruit, to develop, and to retain talented teachers and principals across the system. And so we've got to address those 4 things if we don't want to be back here in 10 years having the same conversation, or 5 years perhaps having the same conversation. And part of what I want to share with you is that happily it doesn't have to be this way. So this slide shows you a little bit of information around the performance of the school systems and the state of the school systems in 3 other cities. In all 3 cities, you have significant student population that go to district schools and significant population that go to charter schools. In the other 3 cities, the choice and competition index grade as measured by the Brookings Institution is a very good score, an A or a B, and parents in those cities are overwhelmingly reporting that schools are getting better, and in fact, if you look at the data, they are, right? Much better than Detroit, where we have a lot of so-called choice, but we're not getting better. And the reason is that those other 3 cities share 3 basic characteristics. The first is that they have a single high bar of quality that they apply to every school in the city, regardless of governance. Right? And if you fall below that bar, you receive support and or you close. And if you are above that bar, those are the folks who are allowed to expand and replicate. Second, they have choice enablers to ensure equity, transparency, and real school choice, like simplified enrollment systems so that everybody fills out a common form during a common window, so on and so forth. They have transportation that actually gets kids to the schools that they want to go to. And third, they maximize resources to ensure efficiency. While there may be some overcapacity, and actually in most of these cities there is not, only because they are undergoing significant population increases, they don't maintain significantly more schools than are necessary to deliver the product, good quality education. And so the whole system doesn't slowly fail because all schools are under-enrolled and not receiving enough money. What's missing from the legislation that we need is something that would do that. It is an entity, a body accountable to Detroiters and responsive to community voice that ensures real and fair school choice for all, not just some Detroit families, and coordinates opening, closing, and planning, meaning location of all public schools, both DPS and charter. That's all it would do. Wouldn't actually open the schools, just plan the opening of schools. Wouldn't actually run schools, just do that work. Finally, this body, accountable to Detroiters and responsive to community voice that ensures real and fair school choice and coordinates opening, closing, and planning of schools, is necessary regardless of whether we have a state school reform office or not. Lastly, I think there's a moral argument here, and I did not give you a slide on it, but I just want to be clear with you that this really is morally the right thing to support, and that's because it solves for all these problems. And if you're really committed to ensuring that all kids receive a high-quality education, that we don't open low-performing schools, you should be in support of such a body. If you're really committed to parents and families truly being able to choose the best school for their kids, having real choice, it's simple and equitable, you should be for the creation of a body like this. If you're really committed to eliminating any subsection of students with 5% achievement rates, if you're committed to eliminating neighborhoods where children can only access one school and it is failing, if you're committed to eliminating the wait lists for students anywhere, you should be supportive of a body like this. The system we have, and you've heard it repeatedly, it's broken. It is utterly and hopelessly broken. It's a massive waste of money. And if you care about Detroit children, don't reset this fight. It's all you're doing right now, without the creation of a body like this, is you're resetting the DPS charter school fight that we have been suffering from for the last 2 decades, and that has left us with this mess. Do not reset. You're tired of that fight too. Don't reset it. Give us something different that's proven to work in other communities around this country. So as I see it, you have 2 options. You can reset that fight. You can give us more of the same. We can accept repeated and ongoing failure, massive waste, inequitable processes, and kids whose lives are being irreparably harmed. Or we can figure out how to create an entity, and it's different in all those cities. Denver, DC, New Orleans do it differently. We can do it however it needs to work here, but it can be done. Introduce a bill. Let's negotiate out what this body needs to look like, what it needs to do, how to do it, and how to make sure that it's fair. Whatever needs to happen in order to make sure that it's fair, it can be done. And we can create the possibility of an excellent education for every Detroit child. Thank you for your time.